Sun Tzu, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. From The Art of War. Chapter 14, The SS and Hitler's Disappearance. In 1945, the disappearance of Adolf Hitler was of much more interest to the world than the disappearance of either Hermann Feiglin or Martin Bormann. Not that there was a shortage of different versions of what happened to the Fuhrer. The Russians, of course, controlled the zone which the bunker was located and refused to permit Allied investigators to search the ruins. The Soviets first reported that they had discovered a body, which they thought was Hitler's. Dental work, they said, seemed to corroborate that conclusion. Then they backed off, and Stalin stated that he believed Hitler was still alive. A detailed investigation into the circumstances surrounding Hitler's disappearance was conducted by Major H. R. Trevor Roper, acting on behalf of the Counterintelligence War Room and the British Army of the Rhine. The investigation took 3 weeks in September through October 1945 and included all evidence available to the United States, British, and French zones of occupation. His conclusion was that Hitler had committed suicide, although he admitted that he had been unable to question those persons present in the bunker at the time, who were later captured by the Soviets. At that time, the same time that the Trevor Roper report was issued, Detachment 1369 of the Allied Expeditionary Force military government received statement from Dr. Karl Heinz Speth, vowing that he, the physician in attendance of when Hitler died of wounds on May 1945, according to the Speth. He was the battalion doctor with the 2nd Battalion, 23rd Regiment, 9th Parachute Division. His unit was engaged in battle and around Berlin. On the first day of May, he established a collection station for wounded in a cellar of the Landwerkskino, across from the bunker at the zoo. About 3 p.m., he was informed that Hitler was in the area, so he left the cellar to get a look at the Führer. The commander of the battalion, Obst, Obst, Oberstleutnant Graf von Rauffenstein, please forgive my mispronunciation of the words and names, received the report from Lieutenant Kirk Ulick, who was leading Company 5. Spaeth said, I was watching as the commander and Hitler approached the tank barricade and heard him warn the Führer that they were in the line of fire of the Russian troops nearby. Hitler ignored the warning, kept walking toward the tank and barricade, and was wounded. At the time, he was with a number of SS men. Spaeth was called within a few minutes back to the collecting station where Hitler had been taken. A shell fragment about 10 centimeters long and 8 to 10 millimeters wide had pierced the uniform and went through his chest. The doctor testified in his disposition the fragment had damaged both lungs. I took a few first aid bandages and bandaged him. During that time, Hitler groaned continuously. He was not fully conscious. To relieve his pain, I got some morphine and gave him a double strength injection. A half an hour later, I examined his pulse and respiration and found that his breath had stopped. Heartbeats continued for about 3 minutes, then ceased. I pronounced the Führer dead and informed the SS leaders of this fact. Spaeth further stated that the SS blew Hitler's body into the air with two 3 kg charges. Later, the doctor was wounded and captured by the Russians. While in a Soviet hospital, he was questioned by a Russian officer and he made a sketch of the area. According to him, Hitler died of his wounds. This report further confused the situation. The doctor was investigated and found to be trustworthy. Yet this story certainly didn't jive with Trevor Roper's report. When both reports were examined closely, it began to dawn on the Allied officials that much of the key evidence of with each was provided by the SS personnel. Could the SS men be trusted? Or were they trying to glorify Hitler's death in the Spaeth report, indicating that the Führer had died as a hero, fighting to the last? Or had Hitler really escaped from Berlin, with the SS covering his trail? In both reports, that his body was burned or had been blown into bits. Evidence gathered during the more than 3 decades since the end of the war reveals that one of the last missions of the SS was to cover up what really happened to Hitler. The SS was to keep the Führer's image alive and glorified so that a new Nazi movement could be started when the time was opportune. One track to have reports, letters, and news items appeared in various parts of the world indicating that Hitler was alive and well. For several years, these accounts kept Allied investigators, German Nazi hunters, reward seekers, and the just plain curious busy. And the fact that there was never been any hard evidence, such as a body presented to the world verifying Hitler's death, has only accented the mystery. Even the Russian autopsy report in 1986, the supposed confirmation, had been riddled by experts. Some of the accounts contained enough confirmable portions that is known to have happened during those last days to require further investigation. Some were ridiculous, others puzzling, a few intriguing. When one SS officer stated during interrogation at a POW camp that he watched Hitler board an ME 109 fighter in Berlin to fly to Spain. Allied investigators didn't check with U.S. Army Air Force personnel to see if it was possible. Instead, they immediately hurried to Nuremberg to question Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's commando chief and one of the most prominent of the SS leaders captured alive. When they read the statements to him, the big German just laughed. What would that would be impossible if our Messerschmitt planes had that long a range. We would not have lost the war. Nor could a ME 109, to which the SS prisoner was referring, carry a passenger. It was a single engine fighter that carried only the pilot. At that time, at that same time that the Trevor Roper and Spaeth reports were, were presented to the United States government, George Albrecht, of a German prisoner of the war at the POW camp in Ruston, Louisiana, decided he knew where Hitler was hiding. He His disposition to the commanding officer of the camp was considered important enough to forward to the War Crimes Branch. Judge, theater judge, advocate in Europe, he stated, due to the fact that my home is situated between New Munster and Kiel in Strong, Strongswig's Holstein, and because I know the environs very well, I want to give the following statement on Adolf Hitler's possible hiding place. On Christmas 1941, I was sitting at an inn in my hometown in Rodenbeck. A man I knew to be well-known Nazi sat down beside me at the table. I overheard his conversation with another party member. He told his friend that his two sons were in Hitler's elite group and that a secret radio station was located in a nearby farm. He hinted that it was a secret gathering place for high ranking Nazis who used the radio. I think these two SS officers might have brought Hitler to this farm after the war ended. Since it was suspected that the German prisoner who gave the disposition was a former SS member, his statement was ignored at first. However, a few days later, an article in a British newspaper explained that officers in the British military who believed that Hitler was still alive were of the opinion that he was probably hiding in Schleswig-Holstein area as a farm worker. Immediately, U.S. intelligence agents searched the entire area for some sign of the Führer. They even checked the numerous caves in the area, but they found no indication that Hitler was in the secret that section of Germany. The search did not add one more bit of confusion. Oh, I'm sorry. The search did add one more bit of confusion for the Allied investigators. As the week passed in 1945, memos and telegrams were transmitted by the score of American branch. British, French, Russians tried to make up their minds whether Hitler was dead or alive, with Admiral Donitz announcing Hitler's death at every opportunity. It was decided that a statement from Eisenhower should be issued to clarify a matter. A memo, a memo from Major General Clayton Bissell, Assistant Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army, explained the predicament. Last Tuesday afternoon, General Marshall telephoned me that he thought it might be necessary and appropriate to counter the announcements being made by Donitz of Hitler's death in order that the Hitler martyr myth would be destroyed and to destroy any hope of the German people that there might be a split between the Russians and the Anglo Americans. It was agreed that the best action was to prepare a measure to Eisenhower to be cleared by the president, calling Eisenhower's attention to Donit's statements and proposing that he issue a release designed to nullify them. Like, comment, share for more.